Have you ever heard of the Bohemian Grove? It might be just one of the greatest secrets to come out of the elite world. Simply put, the Bohemian Grove is an exclusive campground owned by the Bohemian Club, a private gentleman's club. Though it has a long history, these days it's best known for the 2-week event held there every year. The Bohemian Grove is a top-secret campground for the world's most powerful men. Only a few people have successfully infiltrated it, and their discoveries were downright disturbing. Stick around for more on that later. Located in Monte Rio, California, the secret nature of the Bohemian Grove has undoubtedly ignited the imaginations of the general public, sparking wild conspiracy theories and even covert infiltrations to uncover what truly transpires behind closed doors. The question on most people's lips is, what exactly are the richest men in the world getting up to on this 2,700-acre playground? But to really get to the bottom of the Bohemian Grove, we must first take a look at its history. The Bohemian Club officially came together in 1872, but it would be another 6 years before the first encampment actually happened. And who kicked it all off? Well, the club has one founding member to thank. One of the club's founding members was Henry Edwards, a stage actor. However, when Edwards decided to take a chance and move to New York for the sake of his career, his fellow peers from the club decided to throw him an elaborate send-off party. This elite party for Edwards was the seed for what would become a yearly encampment. Nestled in the redwoods close to Taylorville, this party switched into full gear on June 29, 1878. Almost 100 Bohemians congregated for a night of great fun. On paper, the inaugural encampment didn't seem too wild. All of the men stayed up late and drank to their heart's content. The glimmer of Japanese lanterns helped set the mood, and when everyone grew too tired, they laid out blankets and caught some shut-eye. It's unlikely that any of these club members could have foreseen what this tradition would one day become. Even though the club bid Edwards adieu, from then on, they continued to come together every year, planning a similar encampment. At first, they chose different locations, but in 1893, they found the location in Monte Rio still used today. In 1899, the Bohemian Club secured the location as their own by purchasing it. However, they didn't stop there. As the years passed, other members helped contribute to the overall acreage, buying up more land around it and effectively expanding it outward. In describing the Bohemian Grove, one of the earlier members, writer William Henry, offered up a tidbit of magical insight. You come upon it suddenly. One step and its glory is over you. There is no perspective. You cannot get far enough away from one of these trees to see it as a whole. There they stand, a world of height above you, their pinnacles hidden by their topmost fringes of branches or lost in the sky. Though it was a group of artsy journalists who initially started the Bohemian Club, it likely wouldn't have become what it is today without oodles and oodles of money. Therefore, it was only a matter of time before a group of talented businessmen took the helm. Bolstered by financial power, the Bohemian Club was able to make the Grove bigger and better. It still strove to maintain its original ethos, with its members including musicians and artists, or bohemians, and when it came to its growing fame, this was only the beginning. In September 1942, a momentous occasion at the Grove came to pass. It hosted a meeting regarding the top-secret Manhattan Project, a program that eventually produced the first atomic bomb and changed the world forever. The Manhattan Project meeting is still considered a major milestone in the Grove's history, and members today still look back on it with reverence and continue to share the story. After all, some major figures attended as guests, including J. Robert Oppenheimer and Ernest Lawrence. But when it comes to the long list of actual members, there are definitely some very recognizable names. A decent handful of US presidents have been a part of this exclusive club, such as Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan. Other larger-than-life members have included Henry Kissinger, William Randolph Hearst, and John D. Rockefeller. These days, however, the private lists are said to look a little bit different. Reportedly, there's a wide range of members coming from different backgrounds, some from the world of tech and media, as well as some big names from the entertainment industry. Reportedly, Hollywood celebrities such as Clint Eastwood and Arnold Schwarzenegger are part of the Bohemian Club as well. On the surface, the club seems to emit a glow of positivity. It comes across as an opportunity for the powerful men of society to bond in an environment so different from the usual hubbub of their busy lives. Of course, they are not representative of the average person. For the most part, they are all incredibly wealthy older men. No cameras are allowed beyond the perimeter of the Bohemian Grove, so as to maintain its secretive reputation. Therefore, it's no wonder conspiracy theorists have conjured up some nefarious claims, wondering whether all the male members are covertly pulling the strings of political affairs and controlling the global stage. However, those playing devil's advocate to these theories might suggest that their intent is far more elementary. Is there a chance that these very wealthy and influential men just want a chance to escape the expectations of their daily lives? Maybe the retreat is exactly as it sounds, giving them the space to let loose, drink deeply, go skinny dipping, and be free. Or perhaps they get to revel in the knowledge that they are one of the elite few to experience an absolutely bizarre ceremony dating back to 1881. Before we jump into the details of the annual encampment's will rituals, let's quickly go over two of the club's main symbols. To begin with, there is John of Nepomuk, the club's very own patron saint. As the story goes, John Nepomuk chose to die rather than expose a queen's secrets, therefore sentenced to a watery grave by a Bohemian king. As an expert secret keeper, St. John is a wonderful representation of the Bohemian Club, who has honored him in a pointed way. In the Bohemian Grove, there is a lake, and on its shore, St. John has found a special home. There is a very large wooden carving of him holding his finger to his mouth, the universal gesture for keeping quiet. Clearly, this club celebrates their ability to keep their goings-on a secret. But that's not the only strength they cherish. The Bohemian Club is also big on wisdom and intelligence. The men think very highly of themselves, so it's no wonder they've chosen an owl to be their mascot. But that's not all. In the 1920s, this mascot got its very own sculpture, a 30-foot hollow monstrosity constructed by the artist Haig Petigen. Made with steel and concrete, this giant owl also has a place by the lake. This owl statue also happens to be a key feature of a very, very strange ceremony that occurs on the first night of every annual encampment, the cremation of care. The cremation of care is a ritual that kicks off the retreat, signaling the men to release all of the anxieties and stresses that plague their everyday lives. However, the ritual itself is quite intense. The cremation of care plays out in the shadow of the owl sculpture, taking place in the dark of night. What we know now of the ritual today sounds like something straight out of a dark fantasy novel. In 1989, the American journalist Philip Weiss managed to sneak into the Bohemian Grove. He pretended to be a guest and later penned the article, Inside the Bohemian Grove, for Spy magazine. One of the rare moments he reported on was the cremation of care. According to Weiss, he witnessed the procession of men, or priests, appearing from out of the trees, dressed in colorful robes with their hoods pulled over their heads. They made for a rather unsettling picture, especially because they also carried an effigy with them. As is tradition, this effigy has always been called Dull Care. Once this procession reached the shore of the lake, their torches went out. Music began to play, a few priests weaving melodies about care beneath the gigantic owl sculpture. Somehow, the rituals get even weirder. For Weiss, it was the very elaborate costumes that especially caught his eye. The main priest wore a pink and green satin costume, while a hamadryad appeared before a redwood in a gold-spangled bodysuit dripping with rhinestones. The cremation of care proved itself to be quite the spectacle for Weiss, who watched as the men placed an effigy of Care in a black gondola. Propelled through the water by a figure in black robes, the boat made its way toward an altar. The club really went to great lengths to make this a performance to remember, and they even used special effects. There was fake smoke and speakers booming with the imagined voice of Care. However, even today, decades after Weiss's infamous infiltration, the production is still as dramatic, utilizing pyrotechnics and music. Reportedly, the hollow owl statue comes in handy for hiding all of the audio equipment, making it seem like the owl actually has a real voice. Then, of course, comes the cremation itself. After making its way across the lake, the effigy of dull Care arrives at an altar, where it finally gets set alight. This is the ultimate purpose of the entire tradition. The burning effigy glowing brightly as a symbol of all the men cleansing their conscience of their dull cares. On the night Philip Weiss observed the cremation of Care in 1989, he observed all of the men rejoicing as the flames consumed dull Care. According to him, there were also fireworks and a blaring brass band. Considering that stories like this eventually got out, it's no wonder that the Bohemian Grove became a hotbed of controversy. Even though Weiss pulled off his undercover operation, he wasn't actually the first person to get a peek behind the curtains shielding the Bohemian Grove. 9 years earlier, Rick Clogger had successfully wiggled his way in thanks to the helping hand of one of the club's employees. Disguised as an employee himself, Clogger became the first infiltrator of the Grove and put his observations down on paper, finding himself published in a 1981 issue of Mother Jones. However, even before the story went to print, there were already people with their hackles up and teeth bared. The same year Clogger attended the encampment, activist Mary Moore organized her own ceremony in protest of the club's cremation of Care ceremony, and she would continue to protest for decades to come. Moore set up her protest right at the Bohemian Grove's entrance. Here, she and cohorts staged their very own ceremony, known as the Resurrection of Care. But in truth, it wasn't the Grove's ritual that truly got under Moore's skin. It was something else. On the internet and beyond, rumors about the Bohemian Grove circulated in earnest. Some of them insinuated that the club held intimate rituals and even sacrificed infants. Protester Mary Moore, however, didn't believe there was any truth to these conspiracy theories. Her main concern lay elsewhere. Speaking about the main problem with this elite club, Moore commented, "It's that you have these extremely powerful people from politics, the military, and big business, mostly with the same mindset, discussing vitally important matters in total secrecy and no public oversight. I think it's something we should all be worried about." 2 decades after Moore made her very first stand against the Bohemian Grove, another 2 men managed to infiltrate the encampment once again. This time it was radio host Alex Jones and cameraman Mike Hansen. On July 15, 2000, they captured some extremely rare footage of the infamous cremation of Care ceremony. The footage Jones and Hansen brought home truly added fuel to the fire for conspiracy theorists everywhere. And Jones himself was certainly on board, calling the cremation of Care ceremony a ritual sacrifice. With his findings, Jones went on to produce his very own documentary, Dark Secrets, Inside Bohemian Grove. But he wasn't the only one to benefit from the sneaky footage. Journalist John Ronson helped cover Jones's infiltration of the Grove, and he eventually wrote about the cremation of Care ceremony in his own book, Them, Adventures with Extremists. In it, he made a brutal observation of the Bohemian Grove and its ruling club. Ronson wrote, "My last impression was of an all-pervading sense of immaturity. The Elvis impersonators, the pseudo-pagan spooky rituals, the heavy drinking. These people might have reached the apex of their professions, but emotionally, they seemed trapped in their college years." The very last infiltration of the Bohemian Club occurred in 2002, and is definitely the most disturbing one of all. Enter Richard McCaslin. Richard McCaslin wasn't a journalist trying to expose the truth about the Bohemian Grove. He was a former Marine and stuntman who wholeheartedly believed in the dark theories about the club. He later said that he'd been worried about the supposed child sacrifices. Unfortunately, McCaslin decided to take matters into his own hands. Deeply affected by Alex Jones's documentary, McCaslin planned to take down the famous owl statue, burning it to the ground. But that wasn't all. Before trespassing and entering the Bohemian Grove, McCaslin donned a pretty terrifying disguise. He considered himself the Phantom Patriot and wore a blue jumpsuit with this very title written across it in red. He also slipped on an unsettling skull mask. All in all, he was a frightening image to behold. Suited up as the Phantom Patriot, McCaslin also equipped himself with several dangerous arms. However, in truth, he didn't have to prepare so much. He chose to execute his mission in January when barely anybody was around. After all, the annual encampment always took place in July. Little did he know, McCaslin had set himself up for some major disappointment. It wasn't long after setting foot in the Bohemian Grove that McCaslin realized he'd made a major mistake. His target, the huge owl statue, was made of concrete and couldn't be burned to the ground as he'd originally planned. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. Hoping to find some evidence of the twisted rituals he so deeply believed in, McCaslin turned up nothing. To add insult to injury, his flashlight battery failed, causing him to lose his way within the grove. Utterly lost, McCaslin ended up breaking into a cabin and hunkering down for the night. But when the sun rose the following day, he decided to wreak some havoc. McCaslin set a fire in the banquet hall, which eventually alerted the few employees on site, and the authorities ended up apprehending him following a stressful standoff. He faced several charges and wound up behind bars. Considering the Grove has been broken into 4 separate occasions, one might be quick to question the security measures in place. However, these days, things seem to be pretty well monitored. Not only is the security team comprised of ex-military workers, but the tools they use to keep members safe are top-notch. There are motion detectors, cameras, and alarm systems in place. And depending on the guest list, even the Secret Service will have a hand in the club's security. Though the cremation of care is definitely one of the main talking points when it comes to the Bohemian Grove, there is another tradition that mirrors it, the Grove Play. When the annual encampment draws to its close, the club puts on what is known as the Grove Play. This is staged in the final week, and it is quite the production. Reportedly, as many as 300 people come together to make the Grove Play a reality. It is a major musical theater show produced by the club members. They are responsible for every moving part, the script, the compositions, and the technical aspects of the production itself. Reportedly, members start rehearsing a year before the play's date, and as women aren't allowed to join the Bohemian Club, men have to take on any female roles. But even though nobody gets paid for their efforts, the Grove Play is not cheap. Back in 1975, the estimated cost of the Grove Play ranged from $20,000 to $30,000. To put that in perspective, that would be closer to $170,000 today. However, an astronomical price tag doesn't mean that these plays have always been, well, good. According to the author John Van Der Zee, he wasn't too impressed by the Grove plays, even going so far as to call them lumbering pageants. But he didn't stop there. John Van Der Zee's dissatisfaction with these productions even extended to their extremely formulaic storylines. We know in advance that the hero will be a king or commander adored by his men, and that he will see his duty and do it. Though the Bohemian Grove, an all-male campsite, might seem downright antiquated, it's also not that surprising that it persists. The rich will always be attracted to exclusivity, and being a member of the Bohemian Club truly highlights the rung of the ladder these men stand on. The fact that the Bohemian Grove's rituals and stories have become the stuff of legend, as well as its reputation for secrecy, means that the general public will continue to theorize and try to pull back its layers. But whether it is as threatening as some make it out to be has yet to be proven. That wraps up this journey. Thanks for watching Splash Travels. Like and subscribe to uncover more of the world's best kept secrets. And don't forget to dive into even more fascinating facts on our main page, Factinate.